I believe I'm live on Facebook and YouTube. So let me get live on Insta. There we go. There we go. I'm live on Instagram. All right. So, hey there, Tony, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. When you guys show up in the comments, popcorn farts, good to see you. When you guys show up in the comments, let me know you're here. And then at the end of the broadcast, I always read your comments. So if you got comments as I'm talking, definitely put them in the chat. And then I will put them on the screen before we leave today. What we're going to be talking about today is Supergirl, Woman of Today. Supergirl, Woman of Today. Is Supergirl really the woman of today? Is this version of Kara the right woman for today? Okay, so let's jump right on in. Now, the first thing I want to say is that there have been the beginnings of buzz about the upcoming Supergirl movie, and all the usual players are present. So we got the shills, we got the fans who will eat up anything that they're given, we got the director groupies, we got the skeptics, we got the critics. So I thought I would weigh in and give my take, especially after yesterday, because some stuff happened yesterday. So I thought I'd weigh in. I don't know which one I am. Rock, good to see you. I don't know which one I am, so y'all tell me in the comments. I don't know if I'm a skeptic or a critic, or I know I'm not a shill. I know that. And I know I'm not one of the fans that'll just eat up anything that they're given. I know I'm not that either. So I thought I'd weigh in, but y'all tell me in the comments which one of them camps you think I fall in. I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. Okay? So to understand the issues surrounding this upcoming movie that's going to drop in 2026, there's a lot we have to talk about when it comes to Kara Zor-El. Now, I've been saying this for a long time, and I still get pushback when I say it, and I don't care because pushback doesn't make it not be true. Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, is a fetish spin-off character. I keep telling people that. She always has been. She doesn't have her own origin. She has the same powers as Kal-El under a yellow sun. She wears his colors, she wears his cape, and she wears the shield. Okay? And she was wearing the shield before it was retconned to be the family crest, because that wasn't always the case. But she always wore his shield before it was declared to be the family crest of the House of El. Kara doesn't even have her own theme music, because the John Williams score, which is the one that people remember, is about Superman, not her. So those of you that are going to throw up the intro to Melissa Benoit's Supergirl, that is not her universal theme music like the John Williams score is for Superman. Okay? Now, this isn't the first time they've tried to do Kara on the big screen. This isn't the first time they tried to capitalize on the popularity of the Superman film of the time. And with Schmun's Superman, which I have renamed Butt Kit Man, because there is no super in that man. It's not popularity, it's notoriety. But they tried this same kind of 1-2 punch back in 1984 with Helen Slater starring as Supergirl. Okay? Trying to find that picture so I can pull it up for you. I see your comments. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. I'm going to put them on the screen before we go. So right there. So way back in 1984, at the height of Reeves' popularity as Superman, They already tried a movie with Supergirl starring Helen Slater, and she's beautiful. And she looks like you would think Kara would look in real life. So this thing that's going on now, just for those of you that weren't alive back then, is not new. Them trying to capitalize on Superman's popularity, okay, is not new by introducing Supergirl this early in the mythos. Okay? So, Chris Reeve had made the biggest splash ever for the Man of Steel on the big screen, but I'm going way, way back. And they were trying to ride that wave. But the Supergirl movie starring Helen Slater didn't work. Okay, one of the main reasons it didn't work is because they should have put Reeve in it. That was a huge mistake. They said they had scheduling conflicts or whatever, but they should have not shot the movie until Reeve was available. That was one of the biggest mistakes they made by introducing Supergirl. And they had a poster of him, and she said, "He's my cousin," and that was it. And Chris Reeve and Helen Slater actually had lunch, and they talked about it, and there's been articles written about their discussion, but he should have been in that movie. There's no way they should have tried to do Supergirl without Reeve at that time. That was a huge mistake. Okay, there was that. And then the plot was nonsensical. The plot didn't make any sense. And the villain was lame. The acting was god-awful, and there weren't really any stakes. The flying wasn't bad. I thought the flying was kind of good, but it was more obvious with Helen Slater that she was on a harness. See, one of the things that Christopher Reeve brought to the role was that he actually was a pilot. And so he understood something about aerodynamics and things cutting through live space. So he learned how to arc his body to make it look like he was really flying. So sometimes you can tell, but many, many times it looks really real. In the Supergirl movie, you can tell that Helen Slater and her stunt doubles, they were always on a harness. You can tell by the way they moved, by the way they lifted off. It wasn't the same level of physical acting. So it wasn't bad. It was just obvious it wasn't on a Reeve level. And there weren't really any stakes. They try to make it seem like it was stakes, but remember, when you don't ground it in the same world as Superman by having him in it, and when you're introducing the character, but you try to make us believe that the whole world's in jeopardy, because didn't have any stakes. Okay? And Kara didn't really do anything differently than Cal would have. Because remember, she has the exact same powers under a yellow sun as he does. Now, I'll get into some of the retcons of that later, but I need you to understand the basics of the character. She's just a fetish-based spin-off character. She always has been. Now, if you want to understand Supergirl in live action, we've had 4 versions of her. The new one will be the 5th, but we have actually had 4 versions of Kara Zor-El in live action. And here they come right here. Okay. So those of you old enough to remember all that, you know them, but those of you that might be before your time. Okay. The first one I've just described to you was Helen Slater. And also shout out to the Legacy of Nerd for this graphic, because I got this graphic from them, and they always have the best graphics. So I want to give Legacy of Nerd credit. You see the logo on there. So the first one was Helen Slater, all the way on your far left. That's the one that was in 1984. And that's the one that was just as I described. She was really kind of sweet and subdued, and wasn't really too aggressive, very, very feminine, but really kind of soft. She had all the powers, but she was really, really kind of soft, which is apropos for the time. Now, next up, we had Laura Vandervoort. She was a Supergirl of Smallville. Okay. She never really fully suited up, just like Clark did until the last episode, but that's another conversation. I'm never wasting another 10 years of my life on a series again to get no payoff. Smallville has just, I'm never doing that again. Okay. So, but Laura Vandervoort was Supergirl on Smallville, and she existed for one reason only, and that was to humiliate Clark, just like everything else on that show. She could fly, she had all the power, she could do everything before he could do it. She existed just to humiliate him. She flies so easily until she laughed at him for not being able to get us flying together. So she existed on that show to belittle and put down Clark. In the end, she also didn't really have an arc because they never know what to do with Supergirl because she's a spinoff character. So in the end, they actually transported her to the future and made her join the Legion of Superheroes, which we saw an episode with them, but her last appearance is her teleporting into the future. We don't actually see her with the Legion, but we know that's where she's going because Kara always figures out after a while that she actually does better in the 30th century than she does living in Cal's time. So that's what happened to her. But they didn't really know what to do with her. They had her falling for Jimmy, a whole bunch of stuff. But what do you do, which is basically someone that's just a gender-bent Superman? Okay. Next up, we have Melissa Benoist. And no, her name is not Benoist. That's how Americans say it. Her name, she's French. Her name is French. It's actually Benoist. Once I heard her pronounce it correctly, I cannot continue to mispronounce it. So I see your comments. Keep them coming. I'm going to put them on the screen before we go. Loving them comments. Loving them. Okay. So Melissa Benoist plays Supergirl on the CW. She's probably been to date probably the most high profile version, live action version of Supergirl because she started on CBS. So she started on a major network, but they decided not to renew on CBS. And then Calista Flockhart didn't come with them because she would have had to change cities and she didn't want to do that. So then they started her over again on the CW, and then it just wasn't the same. What happened with Melissa Supergirl was her character, no matter how it started, became about proving that I'm better than my cousin in every way. So in Smallville, it was about humiliating Clark, but Melissa Benoist Supergirl was about I'm better than Kal-El in every way. I'm stronger. My powers are better. I can beat him up, blah, 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 blah. They even had one scene where she said she was the most popular Kryptonian, more popular than Superman. So they beat you over the head with the idea that this version of Kara was so much better than Clark in every way. And also, Melissa Benoist's CW Supergirl show became a soapbox. So she became Soapbox Girl. She really did. So it became about ideological platforming of many different sociological issues. And so she preached a lot. She was very, very preachy about what you should like, what you should believe, different groups of people. And it was more about that. It was more about that than anything else, and to the point where it became known for that. And then she also she ends up with Mon-El on that show. And she ended up marrying the actor that played Mon-El in real life, Chris Wood. But on her show, she also had a will they or won't they lesbian relationship with Lena Luthor. So people shipped them really, really hard. So it's kind of like a Zine and Gabrielle kind of thing. Like they weren't officially together, but the chemistry between them was always there. It was implied, even though she ends up with a guy. That happened on the show as well. And her sister was also a lesbian on that show. And so Melissa Supergirl was very much about preaching about different ideological issues of the day. Then finally in live action, we have Sasha Calle. Sasha Calle we only saw her one time. She was the Flashpoint Supergirl. The mistake they made with her was they made her Kara. Sasha is a dead ringer for Sir-El, which was one of Superman's daughters from the future, an AU Supergirl from the future, looked like that. And also Laura Lane Kent, which was another Elseworlds daughter of Superman. That's who Sasha looks dead like. But instead of playing to the strength of her looks, they made her Kara. And so in the Flash movie, the Flashpoint movie, Kal-El was dead. She had to face off against Zod. She had not been under sunlight, so she got her powers literally in 5 minutes. She got them in 5 minutes, and she mastered them in 5 minutes. 5 minutes of sunlight, and she was fully powered, fully in control, and all that. So out of the four we've had so far, I would hazard a guess that the most well-known would be Melissa's, because she got the most exposure just in terms of audience share, I think, even though Smallville ran for 10 years. I don't know if Laura's version of Supergirl is as well known or recognized as Melissa's. And again, we only saw Sasha one time in one of the worst superhero movies we've ever seen, a movie that most of us that saw The Flash would love to forget. That's how bad it was, because it was god-awful. Okay. So that's just kind of a brief overview of Supergirl's appearances in live action up to this point. Now, if you want to understand Supergirl in the comics, if you want to understand Kara in the comics, that is convoluted. I cannot explain to you how convoluted her history is in the comics. So I'm just going to go briefly over some stuff. Again, this is for those of you that don't read comics, those of you that where this may have been before your time, or you were never into Supergirl, or you never followed her in the comics. She has a very convoluted history, a lot like Donna Troy. You know how they never know what to do with Wonder Girl, and they retconned her origin like 4 or 5 times to the point where they started making fun of it themselves? Kara's is not quite that bad, but it's like that. Okay, it's not simple. And again, it's because they've never really known what to do with her. And I'm going to address that before I'm through talking. Okay. Now, the first thing that I will say is that comic historians know this one thing. Comic historians know that they tested the idea of Supergirl before they launched her. They tested the idea of Supergirl before they launched her. Now, those of you that are not comic historians, or maybe you don't have an extensive knowledge of back issues or back catalog, they tested out the Supergirl concept before she made her official appearance. So now also, I'm just talking about Kara, because there was a version of Superwoman that was actually Lois Lane with superpowers that appeared first. And there was also a story where they turned Superboy into a girl. And so Clark Kent became Claire Kent, if you didn't know that. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking specifically about Kara. Okay? So the first thing that they tested us with in terms of Kara as a concept was found in Superboy number 5, which came out November of 1949. So let me put that on the screen for you. And here we go. Superboy number 5. Let me see if I can blow that up a little bit. I hope I can. Superboy number 5 was dropped in 1949. Now, this Supergirl is not Kara. Her name is actually Lucy Regent, okay? And she's known as Queen Lucy of the fictional country of Borgonia. She's an athlete. She doesn't really have powers. She's not Kara. Her uniform is that weird kind of purple and gold. And she's not Kryptonian, and she doesn't have any ties to being a superhero. She's a queen of a fictional country, and she's an acrobat. This was the first test of the Supergirl as a concept to become the one that we know. That's November of 1949. Next up, we have this version, which was, for all intents and purposes, the Supergirl we know, except the origin was different. So in Superman number 123, which is on your screen right now, you should be able to see that pretty clearly. I hope I blew that up. Oh, no, wait. There it is. Wait, where are you? Come on now. Why is this? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. For some reason, my screen isn't sharing. Okay, let me try that again. I don't know why the screen wasn't sharing. Just for some reason, it wasn't. Okay, there we go. There we go. So, Superman number 123, that came out in August of 1958. So this comic is probably the one with the biggest claim to actually being the first appearance of Supergirl, but it's still kind of a prototype. It's still kind of a pre-test. It's not her official launch, okay? So it's written by Otto Bender, which is the one that actually wrote Supergirl, actually created Supergirl. And she has the look, she has the power, she has the blonde hair. But here, what happens is Jimmy Olsen finds a magic lamp and wishes for a companion for his friend Superman. And so a blonde female version appears out of magic. So that was this version of Supergirl, and she was wished up as a companion for Superman, and more on that later, because there's a history of that too, but we'll get there. And so that's pretty much the Supergirl we know in terms of looks and powers. But the origin was that she was a genie wish, a magic lamp wish. Okay? So then we get to the first quote unquote official appearance of Supergirl, and that is this right here. Okay? And that is Action Comics number 252. And that came out in May of 1959. So this is the one that they normally list in all the comic ratings books and the comic guide books and all the comic books, comic guides that tell you how much your comics are worth. This is the one they list as the actual official real appearance of Supergirl, because this is actually Kara. The ones I showed you before were not Kara. Okay? This is also the first appearance of Metallo, if you didn't know that. So the Supergirl from Krypton, that's the name of the story, is when Kara appears, but this time she's real, and she has the connections to prove that she is Superman's cousin, Kara Zor-El. This is also the first time we hear of the first mention of the Kryptonian city of Argo. This is also the first time Supergirl is called by her Kryptonian name, Kara Zor-El, and she adopts the Linda Lee identity, which is her, you know, with the brown wig and the glasses. So this is literally, by all rights, has the right to be called the first official appearance of Supergirl that we know. Okay, and that's the most famous cover, the one that you see on the screen now. Next up, there is unfortunately some bad news, because she hung around, she went through the changes, 50s, 60s, 70s, then they killed her. They killed her right here. They killed the original Kara Zor-El in the Crisis on Infinite Earths. That was one of the biggest comic book events of all time. That was one of the biggest comic book events of all time. It's still referenced today. That came out in 1985. It's still, Crisis is still referenced today. That was the original ending of Barry Allen's The Flash. And that was the original ending of the Kara Zor-El that we meet in 1959 as Superman's cousin. So they killed her in Crisis. Now, this cover, by the way, is one of the most homage covers of all time. This version of that cover is probably the most well-known, but this pose actually comes from X-Men. This cover was not the first to do this pose. So it actually comes from X-Men number 136 right here. X-Men number 136, Child of Light and Darkness, that's the original cover that showed with Cyclops holding Jean's dead body that used that pose. But it's several years earlier than Crisis when this cover dropped, X-Men number 136. But the most well-known probably, and the one that most of the homages are built from, is probably the Crisis cover. But a lot of people don't know that this cover is not the first cover to use that pose. So they got rid of Kara, the original Kara here. And they never really knew what to do with her. And they tried to reinvent her several times, but she's just a female version of Superman. Okay. So what happened after this? Because that's super important. What happens to Supergirl after this? Because obviously it wasn't the absolute end of her. She did come back. But what happened was DC started doing what it is known for doing. Because if you don't understand what Crisis is, and you long-time comics people, I know you know. I'm speaking to those that may not know, the uninitiated, or those who it was before their time, so they don't understand the impact of the event. This event started DC on their technique of reboots. They would write themselves into a corner, because the first corner was the Golden Age heroes. If the Golden Age heroes were still around in the 60s and 70s, how old would they be? And they needed versions of the superheroes that were in their 20s and 30s. So how could the version of Superman that fought during World War II still be in Batman and Dr. Fate and the Flash and all that? So they moved into the Silver Age, but the way they solved the problem was to create another Earth. And so they retconned to say that the Golden Age heroes were on Earth 2. And the Silver Age heroes, Barry Allen, Hal Jordan, Diana as Wonder Woman, because they retconned to say Hippolyta was actually the Wonder Woman of Earth 2. That's a later retcon. So DC started their technique of rebooting. When they wrote themselves into a corner, they would just reboot and start all over. That kind of became a thing for them. And a lot of people don't like it now. It pretty much started with Earth 1 and Earth 2. That was more of a retcon, but the reboot started with Crisis, because first they said we have all these different worlds, and then we're going to merge them into one Earth. Then later on, they broke them apart again. Then they merged them again. Then Superboy Prime smashed through reality, and it's been convoluted ever since. So what they did with Kara in particular, they said that Superman was the sole survivor of Krypton's destruction. So they had several characters that assumed the mantle of Supergirl, but they weren't Kara and they weren't his cousin. Now, one of the main one was Matrix. Also, Linda Danvers and Sir-El. Sir-El, I told you, was a Supergirl from the future. She wasn't Kara. She was Superman's daughter from the future, and she had dark hair. Sasha Calle looks like her. Okay. I have never liked Matrix. I know that's going to hurt, a lot of y'all, or disappoint a lot of you, because I normally like Peter David's writing a lot, but I never cared for Angel Supergirl. I never cared for Protoplasmic Matrix. I ain't never liked that. They never did anything for me. That's just me, just my opinion. Just letting you know. Okay? And so the third Supergirl comic book series was canceled in 2003. That was the Matrix Linda Danvers version. After that happened, they brought Kara back, but not original Kara. They rebooted her, but it wasn't the same Supergirl in 1959. So the modern Kara was basically the girl that fell from the sky, the girl that fell from Krypton. They rewrote her origin to say that she was actually older than Clark. She was actually born, and she was 12 years older than Clark. So Supergirl in the new continuity, in the reboot after 2003, was actually 12 when Kal was born. Supergirl also was retconned to have been a part of Argo City. Argo City split off from Krypton, and Argo City exploded, but it was away from Krypton. And even though the blast eventually caught up with them, Kara's parents had enough time to put her in a rocket ship. She was sent to Earth to mentor her baby cousin, Kal-El. What happened was that her ship got knocked off course, and then she got caught up in suspended animation. By the time she got to Earth, Superman was now an adult and was now older than her. So she was a teenager when she finally got here, and Cal was like 30. So she was looking for a baby. And they used that idea on Smallville too, by the way. She was looking for a baby only to find out that her cousin was now a grown man and older than her. So when they brought Kara back, they brought her back with that backstory. Okay. And that happened in the Superman Batman series, which I loved. And I love the movies. I love Superman, Batman, Apocalypse. I love that. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. There also have been animated versions of her. She's been on Superman the animated series, but she wasn't his cousin. There, she was Kara NZ. She was a survivor of Krypton, but she wasn't from the House of El. And they had her on Justice League, and she's had her own adventures. So there's a lot of content for Supergirl. So that's why I wanted to go through that for those of you that maybe weren't familiar with all that. Okay. But that brings us squarely into today and what I want to talk about for today. So let me put that on the screen. And that's this right here. That's this version of Kara. This version, I see y'all in the comments, you thought I was talking about the movie The Matrix. No, there was a character named Matrix that assumed Supergirl shape. So that's why I wanted to give you the history. That's why I wanted to give you some backstory, because like I said, it's really convoluted. So this is the latest version of Kara Zor-El, played by Millie Alcock, or Alcock. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. And so forgive me if I'm butchering her name. This movie is scheduled to drop next year. Millie is from the House of the Dragon fame, which is a spinoff of Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, when it was was literally the biggest thing on TV. Game of Thrones might be, it's one of the biggest things TV has ever seen. If it's not the biggest, the only thing bigger on TV for sure is like the Olympics, because the Olympics are watched around the world for obvious reasons. But Game of Thrones was one, if it's not the biggest show in history, it's in the top 5. Millie is in a spinoff called The House of the Dragon, which is about the Targaryens before the time of the Game of Thrones. And she plays Rhaenyra Targaryen, okay? Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow is based on an 8-issue miniseries written by Tom King. And that series, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, is going to be the basis for the Supergirl movie starring Millie. Now, you can already begin to see the problems. All right. Written by Tom King, starring Millie, and Schmun, James Schmun is going to have his hands and his fingerprints all over this film. You can already start to see where the issues would arise. Okay. Now, when it comes to Woman of Tomorrow, I'm not going to spoil it for you because I want you to get it. I'm actually going to link this book. For those of you that haven't read this, I really want you to read it. So I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm going to link it in the description box below so you can pick up the compilation if you want. If you don't want to buy all 8, if you can't find all 8 of the issues, then there is a trade paperback. Okay. It's basically a quest book. It follows the plot of True Grit. Supergirl aids a girl named Ruthie in gaining revenge on the man that killed Ruthie's father. So that's not a spoiler because the plot is well known. Okay. And they have all sorts of various and sundry adventures along the way. And the book largely unfolds, told from Ruthie's perspective. The first thing, excuse me, the first thing you're going to notice about this book is that it is painfully verbose. Lord have mercy, so many words and so many word balloons. I mean, literally from the first page, it's just so much dialogue. It's just so much dialogue. But just so you know, I do own it. So I know what I'm talking about. I actually do own it. Let me blow myself up for that. So I do own this book. And the art's good. But like I said, what you're going to notice is so many words, more words than usual. And then I know that doesn't look like a lot, but that's just getting us started. Because as it unfolds, it's so much dialogue, so many word balloons. There we go. I'm trying not to disappear. So many word balloons. So I strongly, strongly suggest that you get this book. The reason I want you to get this book is because you're not really going to understand, is the dialogue good? We'll talk about that. I'm going to put that comment on the screen. You're not really going to understand what this movie is trying to do if you haven't read Woman of Tomorrow. So I'm giving you a strong recommendation to read Woman of Tomorrow, because it's basically a True Grit remake with Supergirl, and it's a quest book. But the one thing I am going to spoil is how it starts, because that's relevant to our discussion today. How it starts is Kara wants to get drunk for her 21st birthday. So she gets a rocket and flies to a planetary system with a red sun where she has no powers, where she can get lit. And she takes crypto with her. That is why Kara's first appearance in the Shimon movie, okay, which I refuse to call Superman because that ain't Superman, that's Butt Kick Man. But this one, that's why she shows up drunk. She shows up drunk and cursing because that's how Woman of Tomorrow starts. It's her going to a solar system where she could get lit, where her invulnerability is gone under a red sun. But in the book, see, in the movie, she left crypto with Cal. But in the book, she takes crypto with her. Okay? That's why this version of Supergirl shows up with that coat on. That coat is a prominent feature of the book. You'll see. That's why I'm saying you really need to read it. You really need to read it to get where they're going with this version of Kara. That coat is a prominent feature of the book, that look. And then that's why she shows up drunk, because that is how Woman of Tomorrow starts. So I can't stress enough about how much you need to read this book to understand what's going on in the movie. But this is where the problem starts. You can already see where this is going. You can already see where this is going. Okay? I made a tweet about it yesterday, which I'm going to pull up in a minute, but I want to say what I've been saying all along. Okay? I got a lot of pushback from my tweet. We're going to talk about that. But I've been saying the same thing from the beginning, and here it comes. James Shimon, is the wrong person for this franchise. His sensibilities as a director do not work for these particular characters. He only does Guardians of the Galaxy. Everything he writes, from Guardians to Creature Commandos to Suicide Squad to the Justice Gang, is all Guardians of the Galaxy. Quirky characters with poor character, with no morals, and they're underdogs or outsiders or weird or perverse. That's all he likes. That's all he writes. Okay? And he loves to focus in on the worst of the character. See his version of Kal-El, which is Butt Kick Man. There's no super in that man. That's Butt Kick Man. The first image of him on the screen is him broken and bloody and bruised on the ground in the snow. That's Butt Kick Man. Okay? And so I said in my tweet, uh, which I'm going to pull up now to show you, that people are used to a different version. People are used to a different version of Kara. And the card that they're going with let me see if I can blow that up. The card that they're going with in the movie is based on Woman of Tomorrow. That's why I keep telling you need to read it. So here's what I said yesterday. I said, I'm calling it now. I'm just calling it now. People who read normies are not going to be prepared for this card. Comic geeks have read Woman of Tomorrow. I doubt most normies have. And I still believe that. And that version of Kara is not the image they have of her. Think Helen Slater, Smallville, Melissa. There are going to be a lot of surprises with this movie, most of them not the good kind, because again, I'm not going to spoil it for you. But what I will say is that this version of Kara has lots of adventures. She has lots of adventures. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying per se that it's bad. So don't take it that way. I'm not saying per se that it's bad. I'm saying it's different. It's different. Different from the Supergirl you're used to, different from the Supergirl that most normies are going to expect based on her live action history. Okay, that's what I'm saying. But Shimon, and so for everybody that's going to say to me, he's not directing the movie. Okay, Kevin Feige didn't direct those Marvel movies, but his fingerprints were on all of it, weren't they? So just because the studio head is not also the director doesn't mean it's not going to be their image or their version or their sensibilities or their whatever that shape the final product. And Shimon is going to have his hands all over this. It's not going to be the Kara that most people are used to. So a lot of people agreed with that take, the one I have on my tweet, but a lot of people didn't. So I'm going to talk about one of the more interesting pushback tweets that I got right here from Elysian Fields. So hopefully you can see that. That's on the screen now. Okay. He said, I think you are wrong about most people not liking the Woman of Tomorrow take. I think she's far more compelling to normal Supergirl, who is in many ways just gender bent Clark. There's a reason why people kept clamoring for Tyler to get his own show after Supergirl 2, and why Melissa Benoit wasn't in Superman and Lois. Okay. I think that's, ooh, I like that. Undead Nerd, I like that. What you said about Gunn, I like that. I'm going to pull that up in a minute. So, saying that they think I'm wrong about that, and most people not liking it because they think the drunk Kara is more compelling. I don't think so. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because it makes her like everybody else. See, this is what this is what I mean when I tell you. It's a shame when you have people write a character that don't get a character, because the whole point of the Kryptonians, the whole point of Clark in particular, is that he has the powers of a god, but he refuses to be a tyrant. He has the powers of a god, but he chooses instead to be a servant. And every other Kryptonian that comes to Earth has his powers. And where's that crest? Where's that shield? He's going to make sure that they understand that they're there to serve mankind, not to rule over them. Now, there's another twist that somebody talked about, which I hadn't thought about, but I heard about it. And that is that since Shimon rewrote Superman's backstory for his parents, Jor-El and Lara, to send Kal-El to Earth to conquer Earth and to repopulate Krypton by Superman having a harem and having babies with as many women as they could, somebody said they're going to make Kara be his wife. Oh my God. Now, I hate to tell you, there's precedent for that in the comics. People have been shipping Kal-El and Kara from the beginning, if you didn't know that. I know it's gross, but it's true. Superman himself, in fact, said that if he were to ever get married, he would marry somebody like Kara. And he said the only reason they didn't get married was because it was forbidden on Krypton for cousins to marry. It was forbidden on Krypton for cousins to marry. So I'm going to pull that up so you can understand that I'm not making that up. Because I'm sure I'm not making that up. Oh, Lord. That image is too small. Hold on. Because it showed two panels, but the panels are too small. Hopefully, this one's bigger so I can put it on the screen. There we go. Yes, it is. Okay. And there it is in living color. After Supergirl returns through the time barrier to the fortress in 1962, Superman, I have a confession to make. I want to arrange a happy marriage for you. I feel both times. If I ever did marry, Kal-El says, Sweet Home Alabama, it would be to someone super lovable like you. We can't marry because we're cousins, though cousins can marry in certain countries here on Earth. But we're both from the planet Krypton, where the marriage of cousins is unlawful. He didn't say, I can't marry you because I wouldn't want to. He said, I can't marry you because the planet we're from, we can't do that. Ever since this panel and before, people have shipped Kal with Kara. There is a ton of fan fiction about them as a couple. And so it's entirely, I hate to say that it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that in Woman of Tomorrow, they make Kara be his woman, his baby mama. But anyway, so back to this tweet. He says that most people are going to be more interested in this version of Supergirl because she's more compelling. I don't agree with that because this version of her wanting to go somewhere when she's 21 so she can get lit makes her a party, makes her like everybody else. Her showing up drunk at the fortress and she's cursing at Kal-El makes her like everybody else. The Kryptonians, the L's, are supposed to be better. Kal-El is the greatest superhero of all time because he has all those powers and he chooses to serve mankind and not rule over them. He's supposed to be better. Doing this to Kara makes her just like any other 21-year-old blonde out there trying to party, trying to have a good time, trying to be rebellious, trying to be whatever. So the final thing I'll say before I get to your comments, because I'm loving your comments, I'm loving them. I can't wait to put them on the screen. But the final thing that I will say about this is that Supergirl's problem is that she needs her own story because she still doesn't have her own story. Now, if you want to see someone they've successfully done that with, even though it's very, very ugly, that would be Batgirl Barbara Gordon. Barbara Gordon now has her own story. Okay? Because she went through the Killing Joke and she was crippled and she was Oracle for a long time. A lot of people don't agree with her coming back from that because they liked her as Oracle, but now she has a reason to be grateful, to be walking again, and she has her own reason to fight crime that's not just in the shadow of Batman. See that? She has her own story. That's what Kara Zor-El needs. They kept trying to, they made her angry. They made her a Red Lantern. They that kind of stuff. But her coming from Argo City and being older than Clark doesn't change the fact that she's still from Krypton and she still wears his colors and she still has his powers and she still wears the family crest, the family shield. Okay? So she needs her own story, like Barbara has the Killing Joke, but I don't want that to happen to her. Don't misunderstand me. I'm saying that's what Kara needs, a more distinct way to be her own character, because she's just gender bent Superman. And even if they try to make her do this, they're still making her be just like everybody else. And she deserves more uniqueness than that. She's just, look at that pouty lip pose, her drinking her Starbucks or her Slurpee, whatever she's drinking. That's just a party girl. That's just, 1,000 girls like that. And that is not who Kara is supposed to be. She ain't supposed to be like every other girl you know. All right? Now, let me start filling your comments because these are great. I love them. Popcorn Fire said, earlier I threw out, I said, I don't know what camp I'll fall in. He says, I think you're a writer and you view things through that lens. I'm a wannabe writer, so I appreciate it. Okay. I think that's right. That's spot on. Because before, I talked about the critics and the skeptics and the shills and the fans that will eat anything they're given. I think that's spot on. I'm a writer. I think that way. I absolutely think that way. I process that way. Okay. And I have my own comic books. And I've been reading comic books since I was 4. Y'all know my backstory. So I do look at it that way from a writer's point of view. So I agree. I think that's dead on. Correct. Okay. Butt Kick Man, that's who he is. That movie is nothing but scene after scene after scene after scene of Superman getting his butt kicked. Okay? What movie are you watching? That movie is nothing but scene after scene after scene of Superman getting his butt kicked. Literally from the first scene to the end of the movie. Okay? See, my problem is I'm a sexist pig, and the first thing I look for in Supergirl's boobies, just being honest. I'm working on it. Okay, that's what I meant when I told you Supergirl's a fetish character. She's a hot blonde in a Superman costume. She always has been. I know a lot of you don't like that. I know a lot of you will push back against that, but that doesn't make it not true. Hot blonde in the Superman costume is what Kara has been. She needs her own story. I wasn't interested in the old film and avoided seeing it. I know I ended up seeing it by traumatically blocked memories of it because it was bad. The 1984 movie with Helen Slater was bad. There is no other way to analyze that. The film was bad. And I told you all the levels it was bad on, but it was bad. So what's going on now? That's what we talked about. So I could bring you up to speed to today. Same with the 90s Captain America movie. Also true because that was awful. Cap had on his helmet and his visor, and the shield was flimsy plastic. It was flimsier than a Frisbee. Don't get me started. Okay. As I mentioned once before, if this new movie is true to the source material, hardcore fans will be pleased, but the general audience may not be pleased. I'm not really a fan. See, now, I think that sums it up. I think that sums it up in a nutshell. I think that's very well said. Hardcore fans of this book will be pleased if they stay true to it, because like I said, it's basically a quest book. And Supergirl along the way gets in many, many, many different situations. That is not wrong or bad per se, but her characterization, once again, look at the picture behind me. You see Millie has that same pouty lip, duck lip thing that we've been looking at for 20 years now. Do you know how tired we are of that duck lip pouty thing? We tired of that, been tired of that. And if that's all that Kara is, she is literally no different from anybody else. So the hardcore fans of that book probably will be pleased if the movie follows, but I think the movie is going to go further. The reason is because they added Lobo, and then they're doing reshoots with more Lobo, and then they're probably also adding Corn Sweat as Butt Kick Man. So I don't think it's going to be exactly like the book, but I know Shmun, he's going to take the worst parts of the book and be sure that those are emphasized. That I can almost guarantee. Fetish-based superhero, that's why I love She-Hulk so much. It is what it is. Supergirl and Flash wasn't bad. She was actually well written, even though she hurts my eyes design-wise. Well, she's Flashpoint Supergirl, so she can work given the story, but that's still not visually not Kara. Okay. So honestly, just going by looks, they all could work. They could, because the first 3 blondes look more like Kara, and Sasha looks like Sir El or Laura Lane Kent. She's a dead ringer for Laura Lane Kent, by the way. Laura Lane Kent. I will never understand the need to reinvent the wheel. Live action Supergirl has gotten progressively worse, except for a Smallville version. The reason that they keep trying to reinvent the wheel, Florida Dreamhouse, and the reason she keeps getting worse is because they don't know what to do with her. I don't want her to have a Killing Joke experience. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, because I don't like that book. I'm saying she needs a distinctive experience that gives her a reason to be who she is, apart from the shadow of her cousin. The reason they keep trying to reinvent Supergirl and the reason it keeps getting worse is because she's still just a spinoff of Clark. She needs a reason. If she does it because of the Kents, that's because of Clark. She needs her own reason. I know they try to make her Darkseid's mistress, and they try to do so many things with her, but none of them really stick. She was a Red Lantern for a while. She was really angry for a while. None of them really stick. You know why? Because she's just a spinoff. His colors, his powers, his shield. So she needs her own motivation, her own situation. Now, another person that kind of grew into that was Nightwing. Nightwing is the quintessential first superhero sidekick. Grayson grew into his own persona as Nightwing. He has his own fighting style. He has his own costume. He has his own city. And even though he has the same origin as Bruce's dead parents, Nightwing has never been quite as grimdark as Bruce. Okay? Grayson still fights with a smile. He's still way more positive in general than Bruce is. That's another example of someone that grew out of the shadow of someone, but became their own character. Kara still hasn't done that. Okay. Supergirl and the Flash interest me, but everything else was trash. I have low expectations for this James Schmunn version of Supergirl. So do I. Because he only writes one thing, he only writes one way. It's always the worst characteristics with the Suicide Squad. It's always the worst versions. Guardians of the Galaxy, Creature Commandos, Justice Gang, Suicide Squad. It's the same over and over and over again. I'm going to kick any of them out of bed for eating crackers. I'll tell you what. I agree with Florida Dreamhouse. It's a specific run on a character that's been around a long time. Why pick that one? Consider the source. There it is. Schmunn is great with obscure characters, but not A-list characters. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly it. And that's what we're going to get in this movie. The poster has Superman's phrase of look up, X'd out, and rewritten over it is look out. That means she's not here to help. She's here to wild out. That's what this movie is going to be. 2 hours of Kara wilding out. Benoit's cousin was a wrestler named Chris. Unfortunately, whatever they make, I want them to do well, and I'll check it out. Hope it empowers female fans positively. I'm not speaking against that. What I'll say to that is I don't know what that means. Whenever you have 20 different definitions of a word or a phrase, it eventually loses its meaning. And empowering females, I don't know what that means. I really don't. I don't know what empowering females mean. Does that mean taking over from male characters? Does that mean not being a damsel in distress? Does that mean showing that they're better than men in every way? Because that's woke. What does it mean? I no longer know what that means, empowering female characters, because Kara has the same powers that Kal-El does. So what does that mean? To empower them? What does that mean? So I'm not speaking against that. I'm just saying I don't understand what it means. Does it mean to show a more developed version of a woman in terms of she's not just a damsel in distress, but she has growth, or she has different parts of her life, and maybe her life just isn't built around relationships? Does it mean that? I'm not sure. So y'all sound off in the comments and let me know, because I no longer know what empowering females means, if it ever meant anything. Because the woke version is what I told you. Men are bad. White men in particular are bad. They need to be replaced. They need to be humiliated, broken down. See Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Star Trek. Men need to be feminized. All that is woke. Okay? That's not empowering women. That's deconstructing males. I see the upcoming Supergirl movie as Hancock. Has she always been like that? I'm not a Supergirl expert. Has she always been like that version? No. This version is particular to Woman of Tomorrow in this movie. When they brought her back in The Girl That Fell from the Sky and Superman and Batman, she was more bratty, yes. She wasn't sweet like the Silver Age version, the 1950 version, the 60s and 70s. She was much more sweet. When they brought her back, yes, she was much more bratty and angry. So I think this is an updated version of what that would look like now. But yeah, she was different when she came back as Superman and Batman, if that's your question. Yeah. I often wonder if the writing rooms on these CW shows got hijacked by activists or if it was always the goal. That's a good question. I think they got hijacked because the first season of The Flash was great, but we know what happened there. We know who got fired and why. And then the first season of Arrow was great, but I think they got hijacked. First season of Supergirl wasn't bad, but I think they got hijacked. First 3 seasons of Smallville was great, and then it stalled until the end. So I don't know if that was always the plan, but I think that became the plan. Okay. My first impression of new Supergirl was the new Shazam. Are they going to make her goofy too? Didn't care for new Shazam at all. Y'all know how I feel about New 52 Shazam. That's an abomination. Can't Zachary Levi Shazam? That's not Captain Marvel. Can't stand it. You know I can't stand it. I do not like nothing about that character. So they might make her goofy based on her appearance in Butt Kick Man 2025. They might make her goofy, but like I said, I think this is going to be 2 hours of her wilding out, acting like a brat. Don't get us started on Shazam. That's right. That movie is based on the New 52 run. That was nowhere near the original Captain Marvel. Exactly. That's exactly right. And don't get us started because I'll be here another hour if you get me to ranting on Captain Marvel versus that stupid Shazam. Don't get me started. Okay? Usually I like lesbians, but I assume the ones in the Supergirl show are not who I'm thinking. I guess that is what it is. Under there, they're not actually gross looking, but they are obnoxious. One kicked him out of bed for eating chips, though. That is what it is. Those are all people's personal things. My God, early Superman comics sound hilarious, especially when Lois wanted to turn herself black. I would chop my finger off on that one. Yes, for those of you that don't know, Lois Lane turned herself into a black woman. That's really real, by the way. The reason she did it was that she realized she wanted to write a story about Black life in America. And she realized that as a white woman, she wasn't really qualified to do so. So she got in the presto change-o machine and there it go. Turned herself into a black woman. She spent a day as a black woman so she could understand what life would be like from a black point of view, experientially, and not from the outside looking in. She understood her privilege. So she had Superman turn into a black woman so she could go among black communities and fit in and try to experience it firsthand. So that was actually really real. That was a real story for those of y'all that didn't know. Wasn't just making that up. Okay. How interesting it was. I want to see a version of Superman where Lois Lane works for Fox News. That might be interesting. That might not be too far off. You know who that is to me? Now that you bring that up, Popcorn. You know who that is to me? That's Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly is Lois Lane if she worked for Fox News. Completely, as far as I'm concerned. I'll be honest, I don't know much about Supergirl beyond the basics. I'm just here to learn and crack jokes. I understand, dog. I understand. The golden age of comics, they leaned hard on the fantasy and throwing stuff at a wall, hoping it sticks. There's a definite charm to the golden age and silver age, because most of Kara's original adventures are silver age. But yeah, golden age and silver age, they just made stuff up. I mean, they just made stuff up. They just made stuff up. Nothing was too wild. Nothing was too off the chain. Nothing was too out of bounds. Nothing, just none of that. Just made stuff up. Okay. That's on the DC Finest cover. Yeah, the cover of Crisis. Let me find that again. Again, one of the most homage covers of all time. That one. But the original cover was the X-Men cover. But this is the one that most people know. And this is one that most people reference. Okay. Crisis predates Secret Wars. Well, it kind of happened at the same time. Crisis was like 1984 to 1985. Secret Wars was, 84 to 85, and so kind of was Crisis. So it's not a complete predating. There's some the first Secret Wars. They're somewhat simultaneous, somewhat. But the last issue of the first Crisis was April of 85. So kind of same time frame. Secret Wars 83 to 84, but 84 into 85 as well. Just about to say similar to X-Men. Yeah, that's where they got it from. I have that X-Men graphic novel. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's any bigger event than the Dark Phoenix saga up until we got to Crisis. I mean, good Lord. Still the best of the day. She grabbed OG comic while the market is down, but buy those dips, yeah. DC is confusing. It is. Like I said, they got on the reboot tip. They got on the idea of when we write ourselves in a corner, we'll reboot the whole universe. We'll reboot the whole multiverse. And that's how we ended up getting reboot after reboot. And we got New 52, and then we got Rebirth. We got a whole bunch of stuff. That's why they keep doing that. Because that's pretty much the vehicle, the tool they've used when they write themselves into a corner and the heroes stop making sense. So they just start the world over again. Okay. DC started Ultimate Crossover Justice League in multiverse before Marvel. Now Marvel's doing it in the film first. Kind of sad and hilarious at the same time. So it depends on which version you're talking about, and it depends on which version stuck in people's minds. DC did start Ultimate Crossover in multiverse because they put the World War II characters on Earth 2, and then they had the newer characters in the Bronze Age meet them on Earth 1. And so I'm going to pull that coming up for you to show you when that first happened. But it was the beginning of a precedent that never goes away. So let me pull that up and I'll show you that. Because I always like to show you these comics so you can, see the covers and get them for yourself and read them if you're interested. Here it comes. So this is when they established that the Golden Age characters were actually a part of World War II on a separate Earth. And the Silver Age characters that we knew, Hal Jordan was not Alan Scott, Barry Allen was not Jay Garrick. And eventually they said that the earlier Wonder Woman was Hippolyta and not Diana. Their Batman, Earth 2 Batman, dies. Their Earth 2 Superman actually grows old, and then Lois dies. So it's a completely different kind of progression. But that's when it started. So yeah, DC does start that. And then later on, Marvel taps into multiverse. I thought you were talking about the movie The Matrix. No, I'm talking about the Matrix Supergirl character. Okay. I'm going to be honest. I don't hate this version. She's hot popcorn. You're hilarious. I like that she's a drunk, sloppy mess. Okay. I'm excited to see Momoa as Lobo. It's also cool to see David Krumholtz still good work. He's Bernard in the Santa Claus. So all of us comic fans know that Momoa was born to play Lobo. So him playing Aquaman was one of the biggest head scratchers. The biggest head scratcher of all time is Jesse Eisenberg as Luthor and Ezra Miller as Barry Allen. We ain't gonna never understand. We ain't gonna never understand what kind of drugs was you on to do them castings. Eisenberg is Luthor, Ezra Miller is Barry Allen. But Momoa was born to play Lobo, not Arthur Curry. So there are a lot of people that are going to want to see this movie for his portion in it. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's the character he was born to play. So I'm sure he's going to crush it. He might even steal the movie, to be honest with you. The Lobo scenes might be the scenes that actually steal the show. Because this is something we've been waiting on ever since we first met Momoa. Because everybody that saw him knew it like, that's Lobo incarnate. So we've been waiting on this for a long time. So I'm thinking that Momoa might actually steal the movie, to be honest. The only positive I can give to Woman of Tomorrow is that the art is amazing. Well, the positive that I would give it is I like some of the situations, some. Again, I'm not going to spoil it. There's some situations, and some of them they borrowed from Superman comics because of course they do, because Kara is a spin-off character. But some of the situations that they put them in, I really liked them because they were unique. There was stuff we haven't seen a lot of before. Again, no spoilers, but I really liked them. So those parts that I liked, I hope they put that in the movie. So I'm not going to say that was just the art, but some of their side quest adventures were pretty good. And then there's some stuff that's going to have you scratching your head. There's some stuff that's going to have you saying, what in the complete world? Okay. Krumholtz is a great actor. Admittedly, I'm kind of bummed the Authority movie isn't happening. I actually enjoyed the comic. That is more Shaman's speed, is the Authority. He needs to do something like that. That's more his style. Cautious for saying jokes are bad. Is it as bad? Yes. It's just so much dialogue, and a lot of it, I'll put it this way, a lot of it could be said more succinctly. Not that some of it didn't need to be said, but it could have been said much more economically than balloon after balloon after balloon after balloon. Because I got tired reading it. I'm like, is this done yet? I do his wording like something Kevin Smith would write. It is extremely word. Is the dialogue good? Again, it's not bad. It's just too much of it, and it needs to be streamlined. It could have been done much more economically. Have to give it a check. I've been getting the Power Girl lately. Now, for those of you that don't know, I'd have to do a separate live stream on Power Girl. Power Girl is Kara from Earth 2. She has a convoluted history now, too. So I'll have to go over that in another live stream. But yeah, I definitely want you to read Woman of Tomorrow. So again, I'm going to put a link. Weird, I've been reading the Hanna-Barbera stuff, Space Ghost, Blue Falcon, Hercules, I've enjoyed them. That stuff is great. The Hanna-Barbera stuff, that stuff is absolutely great. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I highly recommend. Highly recommend watching the old cartoons. Highly recommend reading the trade paperbacks. Johnny Quest. The Johnny Quest cartoon is still awesome. Still awesome to this day. So highly recommend that. That stuff is great. That's when they let heroes be heroes. And it was about that. It wasn't about as making the hero as broken as you could, like now. It was about heroes being heroes. Drunken cursing is my kind of woman. Give me all of it. You're going to get plenty of red flags for this version of Supergirl. Don't even worry about it. I've been wanting to get into some of that too, Rock. Hanna-Barbera stuff. Highly recommend it. It's such a shame Jerry Conway went down that rabbit hole. Didn't he say he regrets making her sexy? Well, it depends on which version of Supergirl you're talking about. I have to do some more research on what Jerry Conway said in terms of that. But for a while, it did kind of become her identity, which is why I keep telling you she's a fetish character. She's a hot blonde in a Superman costume. She always has been. Hanna-Barbera always reminds me of Harvey Birdman, attorney at law, Space Ghost, Coast to Coast. They're a fun read. I can see that popcorn. I was hoping he'd do great. He refused to change his writing style. I write comedy, but also I write serious stuff too. Okay, so the Power Girl I have is PG Returns. In Feige stopped being as involved as things progressed. That's my theory anyway. No, he didn't. That's all his vision. Feige said his goal was to make the Marvel Universe more than 50% female. He said that flat out, and he did. So all that happened, it starts with Captain Marvel. So that stupid Captain Marvel movie that should have been Black Widow's movie. Everybody knows that should have been Black Widow, not Captain Marvel in that slot between Infinity War and Endgame. Captain Marvel is what started it, and then it got progressively worse because his goal was not to make good book-to-screen translations. His goal was not to make strong stories. His goal was to turn it more female. Why would they give Ironheart a show? Why would they give Echo a show? Even hardcore comic fans don't know who that is most of the time. I think Gunn will work with Doom Patrol movie. Yes. Yes, that's what he needs. Or Justice League Dark. Schmann's sensibilities as a director fit with Doom Patrol and Justice League Dark. That would be perfect for him. Until he has popcorn, I agree. I think I've just had an epiphany about Schmann's DC. He's writing director at the way he likes and entertains himself first and the general audience last. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's not what I want to see. This is correct, except some of us knew that from the jump. I knew that from the jump. I knew he had the wrong sensibilities for what they gave him because he does write stuff that he likes and doesn't care if anybody else likes it. Some people do, but it's not for general audiences. And I'm not saying per se that it's innately bad. I'm saying it's very specific and it doesn't appeal to general audiences. Okay. That's gross because of cousins. Yes, it is, but I showed you it's in the comics. It's been in the comics for a long time. People have shipped Kara and Cal for a very long time. If there was ever going to be a time where that happened in live action, it would be under Schmann. He perverted the backstory of Jor-El and Lara and said that Cal was supposed to be conquer and repopulate Earth by having harems. He can repurpose Kara's story and say that she's supposed to be his first woman. She could bear his super children. Just think about it. He's not above that. I didn't hate a Superman movie, but it was not my Superman. I did hate it. I do hate it with every fiber of my being, with every ounce of strength I have. I hate that movie. I hate Butt Kick Man. Anybody trying to talk me into liking that movie, you're wasting your breath. I hate it. Supergirl is his wife. That's as bad as a bride having the mind of a child in love with Victor later. Yeah. I'm not saying for sure that I know that's going to happen. I'm saying it could happen. And Schmann has the type of sensibilities where he wouldn't have a problem making it happen. Krypton wants some cereal. Yeah, hard pass there, and the jokes write themselves. Yes, they do. Harlan Ellison issues Women of Tissue. Superman would need a mate on his level, but not his cousin. There's Maxima. You can always get with Maxima. Wonder Woman, him and Diana, not family. Sweet Home Alabama. Krypton did with Alabama reviews. Y'all are something else. Still don't like how he's stroking her chin like that. Yuck, that's right. That's right. Cajun, yeah, I told you. I told you the real happens in the comics. Gives new meaning to keep it in the family. Y'all, Lord have mercy. They should make Kara from a different family. Oi, right. That's what they did in the animated series. That was Kara NZ. She was not Kara Zor-El. She was not his cousin. So if they're going to do that, they need to make Kara from another family, not from the House of El. Again, why is there a need to reinvent the wheel? Superman, the movie, was the blueprint. Yes, it's not hard. Woman of Tomorrow is not my cup of tea. I'll see the movie, but I'll probably not like it. I'm going to see it too, because I do want to see what Millie does with the role. And I do want to see Momoa as Lobo. And then I just kind of want to see how all this plays out. I'm not actually looking forward to it story-wise. But in terms of Superman the movie being the blueprint, I couldn't agree more. But they haven't learned that lesson with Fantastic Four. They haven't learned it yet. They haven't learned to make a good book-to-screen translation, make them be who they were in the comics. They haven't learned that yet. And then the Carter's Wonder Woman, okay? But they didn't learn it in the movies. Clark has better morals than Alan Moore. Jerry Lee Lewis clearly never Superman. I'm getting grossed out right now. Can we move on from Cal and Kara being together? Yes, it grosses me out when I talk about it too, but has to be mentioned because it's a real thing. Florida, my guests are suspicious. Some of these writers and directors don't like the characters, and some of them are very pretentious. Yes, and yes. They can't get out of their own way. Yes. Yes, 3 times. Jeff Johns doesn't like Batman, and Jeff Johns doesn't like Martian Manhunter. So he made it his business to make Hal Jordan and Batman in conflict in New 52, and he cut out Martian Manhunter altogether, replaced him with Cyborg. Jeff Johns didn't like Captain Marvel, so he made up that stupid New 52, which is big with superpowers, and turned Billy Batson into Billy Batson, a punk and a brat and a thief, which shows that he has no idea who Billy Batson is or why he was chosen. But Johns don't like Captain Marvel, Johns don't like Batman, and Johns don't like Martian Manhunter. Some of these writers don't like the characters, and some of them are very pretentious. They can't get out of their own way. They think they know better. That's right. There's Bruce on Instagram. I'm here for it. You're hilarious. Aside, Netflix is trying to buy Warner Brothers right now. They get DC might be a good topic for next week or later. Yeah, I thought about that. I know that's kind of like the hot topic now, but I don't have enough information on that yet to do a live stream, number one. And number two, for me, that boils down to what's going to change, if anything. The fact that they bought them, people are freaking out, but I'm more of the mind of what is going to be the net result. Because if not that much changes, we won't feel it. So I have to do a little bit more study to see if there's going to be, they've been talking about a writing change and getting Gunn out and a whole bunch of stuff, but it's just talk at this point. So Netflix has bought Warner Brothers, but I need to do a little bit more research. I need to get a little more sense of what are they going to do with it. You know, there's been all that talk about bringing Snyderverse back, but are they really going to do that? So I don't know. Maybe marketing should consider pushing selling The Woman of Tomorrow at the theater. That way audiences can understand the movie better. That's a good idea. But to be succinct, I don't think the family audiences are going to want their young daughters imitating Kara if she's a lush and a drunk, and if she's wilding out and she cusses a lot. She got a potty mouth because she did in Butt Kick Man, the movie. If you're bringing your 8-year-old daughter to a Supergirl movie with the idea of Helen Slater or Melissa Benoit or Laura Vandervoort with that idea, and you see this, see, that's what I'm saying. I think the hardcore fans, as I said earlier, of the book would be pleased, but I don't think normie audiences are prepared. I think they're not expecting who this version of Kara is going to be, and if you have children that are 7, 8, 9 years old, children under the age of 10, do you really, is that a role model? Is that what you want to see? Putting the idea in the head, I can't wait to get 21 so I can just wild out legally so I can just get sloppy drunk. Is that what we're saying? See, that's my point. Empowering women is a marketing slogan, probably good role model. They're right. I remember when Trump made his grab him by the coochie comment, when I felt the need to go social media and say, mine is made of steel. I mean, really, the WCW is woke. Yeah, when Trump made that comment, grab women by the genitals, that was all over, didn't disqualify him. People had a reaction to that, and people still react to that. But the point I'm trying to make is that a family-friendly conversation? I know the President of the United States said it, and I know a lot of people reacted to it. That is not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is, if you have small children, if you have children under the age of 10, are we having that conversation? Are we talking about grabbing women by the genitals or whatever? Because that is sexual harassment, that is assault, that is nothing good. That's a bunch of wrong stuff. So what I'm trying to point out is that these are different conversations that we have to have. And that's my point about introducing a level of Supergirl that may be more on the wilding outside. If your daughter's a teenager, if your daughter's a young adult, that's one thing. If your daughter's still a little girl, that's a different conversation. And that is my point. That's where I think this is going. I think that the people that are going to bring their small, like, what's the biggest movie now that outgrows everything was Zootopia? I think the family-friendly crowd are going to come to a Supergirl movie with the expectation of something like Zootopia, but in live action. I don't think they're going to be expecting conversations on this level. That's exactly my point. If you're an adult, you live in a world where things happen, where people say and do all kinds of outlandish things. If you're an adult, you know that. Okay? But if you're still a kid and you see stuff like that, you have to ask your parents, what does that mean? And that's going to invite a certain conversation. Do parents want to have that conversation in a Supergirl movie? I personally don't think so. Crazy Golden Age costumes, although a few hit it out of the park. Golden Age jails over Black Terror the target. Yeah, some were hit or miss, but that's always the case with costumes. They're always hit or miss. Hey, brother, I understand not judging character from the first few minutes of the movie. The first impressions of everything. Shmun made me frown with drunk Supergirl. I don't disagree. Now, what I have said on Twitter is that I want to wait and see her more in the context of her movie. But I also agree that first impressions are powerful, and you only get one. How do we know that? Just go on a date with somebody. Go on a date and do something ridiculous and watch what happens. You only have one chance to make a first impression. So I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, Stephen, at all. I was saying I want to see more of Millie to get a better feel for what she does with the role. But the first impression they gave us of this version of Supergirl was a drunk, cursing party girl. If my daughter's 19, if my daughter's 21, she knows that world. If my daughter's 9, do I want someone with a Superman shield, acting, talking, cussing like that? You want your kids to see a Supergirl with a potty mouth? You want them to imitate that? These are the kind of discussions we're going to have when this movie comes out. That's what I'm talking about today. That's what this is going to do. But I agree with you, Stephen, that first impressions You only get one, and they make a quantum difference. If you don't believe that, just do something stupid on a date. Watch what happens. Speaking of writing yourself into a corner, have you covered the Spider Clone Saga? No, I have not. I might do that on a future uh, broadcast because it's another one of those things that requires extensive discussion. We can't. I just kind of can't quickly mention it because it changed the game for the worse, and also the symbiotes. I made you one on Venom. When Venom was first introduced, he was one of the coolest characters we'd ever seen. Then they went symbiote crazy, but I'll have to do a separate one on that. Jesse, that's right, Eisenberg. Yeah, no. I understand the idea behind Eisenberg, what is a failed experiment they should have learned from. Maybe they were trying to make it more Zuckerberg as Luther. Don't know, don't care, hate him. It was one of the most awful things I've seen in my life. In defense of Ezra, Barry sounds like a gay name, but that was not Barry Allen. That was Peter Parker as an introvert, written by Joss Whedon, named Barry Allen. Costume looks good. Supergirl's costume. I think it looks good. Actually, I think it does. Barry's a proud homosexual name, you guys. Johnny Quest, a gold standard on a great cartoon. Yes, Johnny Quest is the best. If you've never watched Johnny Quest, another strong recommendation from me to check it out. Because you won't believe the animation and you won't believe what they do with it. You won't believe it. Back then, they did it. Johnny Quest does demand respect, but again, I think it was an episode and Harvey Birdman turned it long. The Doom Patrol show wasn't bad. It's just that it was barely a superhero show and it was woke. Yes. Very much so. Because the woke virus infested everything after 2012. 2012 through 2015. And then it just grew. And now it's consumed everything and everything is ruined because of that stupid woke virus. I don't know if Feige said that. He did. There's an article. I've linked it on Twitter before. There's an article. Certainly wasn't what he was saying in phase one because he had Ike Perlmutter and a quality control board. Now I'm gonna say it again. I know Perlmutter was a racist. I know that. I know Perlmutter didn't believe female superheroes would sell. I know that too. I also know he had a quality control board, which means Feige couldn't just do what he wanted to do. That's why the phase one movies were better. Then Feige got him kicked out, and Feige had complete control. He had carte blanche, and then that's when the Marvel Universe and MCU went to crap. Because then it became all about turning them all into women, not about telling good stories. If I hear one more thing about the Snyderverse restored, I'm going to watch Teen Titans go on repeat. The Snyder fans won't let that go. That's a very particular take. It's not a take I enjoy. It's very dark and dystopian, which is the wrong fit for these characters. Snyder should have done Justice League Dark. Snyder should have done The Outsiders. Schmunz should have done The Outsiders. Schmunz should have done The Terrifics. That's what they need, not the Kryptonians. I could be wrong, but my understanding was the Snyderverse was going to be a slow build to the bright and heroic characters that a lot of us are raised to. A lot of us are used to. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe, but he didn't do that. If that's where he was going, he didn't do that well. All the stuff in Man of Steel, all the stuff in Batman vs Superman, they didn't do it well. If they wanted to go from dark to light, there are better ways to do it. If that was the goal, but that was not done well, if that's where we were supposed to end up. I say let Tim Burton direct the next Supergirl movie, yeah, but then it'll be Jenna Ortega and Wednesday Addams as Supergirl, which might be fun to watch, but it's not going to be. It's going to be Wednesday Addams as Kara for sure. I'm seeing Five Nights at Freddy's tonight. I'm also hoping to see the whole Bloody Affair this weekend. Right, with the Kill Bill remake of everything done. does give her a potential built-in arc, though, where she learns to put the booze down and become a role model. Maybe. Maybe. I don't need to see her as drunken lush, and neither does my 9-year-old. I don't have a 9-year-old daughter, but if I had a 9-year-old daughter, I don't need to see that. So maybe. So we'll see. So like I said, that's why I want to talk about this today, because we have to have these serious conversations. Is she really a good representation? If she is a representation of the girls of today, that's going to mean lots of selfies. There might be a mention of OnlyFans in this. I mean, just think about it. Just think about what's in our contemporary climate. Are they really going to put Kara in that kind of situation? They might. And is that the version of her we want to see? Is that the version of her we want young kids to see? Is that the version of her that is going to be a role model? Okay. Geek Out Loud says, what kind of daddy issues is Supergirl going to have? I think the Gunverse is centered on daddy issues, that too, because he's got serious daddy issues. Just like Leslie Headland had with the Acolyte, Shimon also has serious daddy issues that show up in all of his works. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So that's it for me today. I know I went kind of long, but this is, like I said, discussions we really need to have, stuff we need to think about. So those of you that are watching this on the replay, sign off in the comments. Let me know what you think. Those of you that join me live, thank you so much. You know I appreciate your comments. Please like and share this video. That helps the algorithm. Please hit subscribe so you know when I drop new content. I've been off for 2 weeks for the holiday break, so I'm back on for at least 3 more weeks. Then we're going to take another holiday break for Christmas, but I'm back on for at least 3 more Fridays doing my live stream, 10 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. Thanks so much. And we're going to continue to have this discussion on Twitter because there's still so much to talk about. So if you don't follow me on Twitter, follow me there, DT2 Comics Chat, and we can continue what we started here today. All right? DT2 Comics Chat, out.